Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good.
I'm sorry, but are you new, or I think this is the first time I've seen you.
Oh, I'm from Red Hat. So we are using Gatekeeper. So yeah, I'm attending not every meeting, but I'm trying to. Yeah.
Gotcha. Welcome. See, but it sounds like you've been here before.
But yeah, actually, yes, every time.
Oh no, now I'm embarrassed. How long has it been?
Oh, why? Why?
Oh, oh, I thought this was your first uh, meeting.
Huh? Sorry. Me?
Oh, I'm embarrassed because I thought this was your first meeting, and it wasn't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I really, actually, um, yeah, I'm very new to Gatekeeper, but actually they want to be on the Gatekeeper expert because our customer really needed a lot Gatekeeper. So yeah, I'm trying to be a expert right now.
Oh,
Anyway,
God,
thanks.
good.
Thanks.
All right, well, let us know if there's any way we can help with that.
Oh, thank you. I'll wait later. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, welcome. And yeah, please add anything to agenda if you have any questions or anything you want to chat.
Oh, thank you.
Good evening.
We have a video. Oh, we do have video.
The
You
entire
got
Hayes Valley joined.
I'm sorry.
It
I
says
know.
Hayes Valley.
That's where
you
we're
got
joining
the
from.
conference room thing to work?
Yeah, Davis figured it out.
I mean, it's not too hard. I just looked it up. But yeah, we didn't know we could join Zoom from the Google room, so this is a nice treat for us. Make our
Yeah.
Wednesdays a little easier.
No more switching whose laptop has the audio.
Exactly.
We both had our headphones prepped too, or ready, just in case.
Expect failure.
Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah. Has it been since like the uh, sort of COVID resurgence that you've been to the office?
I can't remember.
Because I remember
That
there was
long.
like, oh, it's time to go back to the office. And then COVID came back, and then people were like, oh, never mind. Remember that?
Yeah, there
For
were
that.
a few times.
I go consistently every 3 months.
Just to make sure your
Seriously,
apps
I don't
still
think
work.
I've been in 2 or 3 months.
It's definitely been longer than 3 months since I've been to Redmond. mean, I live in Ballard, so that's basically like an entirely different state.
Wait, so is this how you guys keep track of the release schedule? Like, oh, I've been to the office. Must be time to cut a release.
That's a good one, yeah. That's why it changes sometimes. Okay, we wanted to do the triage first or the other topics? I have very short ones. If you want me to go first, and we can get those out of the way.
Or
The famous last words, though. Yeah, 3.14 release. Are we okay for it today? Okay, Alex, did you want to add the namespace exclusion into it or no?
I would like to do what the maintainers recommend in this case, and I think what our docs say, because our docs say n-1, and I thought n-1 was 313. Am I wrong?
So your PR, I think, has been merged to master, but it's not in the release 3.14. So if you want the PR to be in 3.14, we'll have to cherry pick either now or after the release, and then it becomes 3.14.1.
I'm fine with cherry picking it. I'm just like asking, like, oh, should we just do it for 3.14 and not 3.13 then?
I
think
wouldn't
it's
do
okay
it.
to do both. Yeah, it's a fix anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I see no reason to backport this. Like, we're cutting a new release. This bug has been out for how long? It's not impacting that many people. Like, if someone like insisted on it, I think yeah. But I don't know if that's the case.
well, there is a bug. There's an issue open, so we could ask. We could ask, like, do you need it for 3.13? Or we could wait for people to ask us. That works too.
Yeah, I tend to do the latter. Like, yeah, to be clear, if it was like, going to be months before there was another release, yeah, backport it. But
I mean, we're going to create a new 3.13 release anyway, so might as well add it. Yeah, I'm okay either way.
are
can
we
I also
going to
get
cut
a
a
review on this
3.13?
one so we can do the CVE fixes for 3.13? Otherwise, people are just going to complain.
If we're cutting release anyway, why not?
Yeah, there's no harm in it. Yeah.
All right, so what I heard is that we're gonna put this into 3.13 and 3.14. Happy to do the cherry pick PR for 3.14 as well.
Okay, and then let's cut the release today after you merge it in.
Sounds good.
Thumbs
That
up
was
for
fast.
everybody. Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's what I said. Okay, and then so for KubeCon demo, I prepared a demo that this is basically side-by-side cell and Rego, and then pops up. And take a look at it. It's on my repo, and after either KubeCon or later in the week, I can add to the Gatekeeper website also, so we have it in the demo folder. Sorry, not website, the repo.
Nice. This is for like, is this the maintainers talk or is this?
Yeah, with Charlie, yeah. And then the presentation is basically the same thing that Rita did for the KubeCon Europe with the validating admission policy stuff. I just updated with 3.13 and 14, and then so the demo includes PubSub as one of the 3.13 features. Yeah, and then if you have any feedback, yeah, let me know before Thursday. That's when the talk is. So and then I'll update. I mean, so next Thursday.
Gotcha.
That's it. Yeah, there's a demo magic script that should be very like reproducible every time. So if anybody wants to run it, interested, yeah, they're definitely welcome to run the demo script.
Do we
Do we
want
want to do the VAP UX design doc, or do you want to triage first?
Well, are we gonna time gate the triage? If so, probably better to start with that one.
Does anybody want to share their screen, or I can do it?
I suppose I'll. Oh man, I was trying to type demi magic is only kind of magical. Anyway, get it? Get it? Demi means slightly or half.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll share since probably be presenting for the other thing. Share screen. But first, where do I need to go? The gatekeeper. Share tab.
There's an AI companion in Zoom now.
Oh wait, there we are. The pause audio sharing too. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good, good. And can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I see. I could drop down and you could see the screen. All right. Issues. And so probably we want to do the triage label. Is that right?
Yeah, the filter. No, go to the filter. Go back.
Oh, you can also do this. Just click on the. It goes both either. Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So how do we want to? Do we want to sort this in any way? Like recently updated, most recently updated, anything like that?
Maybe not recently updated.
Least recently
Least.
updated. It
I
is.
can't talk. Yeah.
And is the font size good? Should I enlarge it?
No, you're good.
Cool.
Also, when are we time boxing it to?
15
2:30
minutes.
or
Plus at most 30 minutes for the doc. Or go ahead.
2:30 then. So 15 minutes.
Okay, let's go.
All right. Document overall architecture of Gatekeeper and Markdown.
Blast from the past.
The far distant past. This document top-down approach.
Wow.
Gatekeeper.
This is help wanted.
Uh-oh. We didn't. Oh no, there's some images. Maybe. What? What are these X's? That's trippy. I don't know. I haven't seen much need for, or request rather, for anything like this. We do have the operations breakdown nowadays, right? In the Gatekeeper docs that says like the different sort of sub tasks that Gatekeeper has and what permissions they require.
I guess we don't have a design anywhere, do we? Can you go to the website?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what triggered this issue.
Well, no, this is back when Gatekeeper wasn't fully written.
Yeah, this is old. Yeah, this is before my time.
But I
Nope.
guess in general, do we have an architectural design for Gatekeeper?
I mean, it has an architecture. Oh, look, there's an architect. We called it the section architecture.
Oh,
That's funny.
hilarious.
So, yeah, it doesn't show boxes, but it
Wait,
says
where
like, hey, here's a webhook.
We can't see that tab.
What? What is happening? Oh, weird. Sorry,
Oh,
I didn't realize I'd opened a new
architecture.
tab.
I see. Oh, there's operations, performance tuning, OPA versions. But no actual architecture though.
You mean
right?
like a diagram?
Yeah.
I mean, what architecture are people specifically interested in? You know, like this seems to me operationally salient, right? Like, hey, if you want to run pods, here are the things you can run on those pods. Here's roughly what they do and the permissions they need, why they need it, right? You could go into here's where Gatekeeper specifically caches its data, you know, and here's how PubSub is architected and things like that. I don't know how useful that is, to be honest, right? Like it might be helpful for someone trying to grok the code, but also that would be so tightly coupled to the code that I would fear that it would just go stale relatively quickly.
I'm okay with closing this, and if we need it, we can add a new issue, I guess.
You're sorry, you said you're okay with closing it. You said
Yeah.
okay.
Since we haven't had it, I guess.
There is. I'll just close it with.
All you mechanical keyboard people.
I like people to know that I am typing.
And
And maybe what I'm
passionate
typing.
you are about it.
I like to type like people play toccata and fugue in a pipe organ. No? Okay. Next one. How to handle API versions for object under test. I don't know if we still have a great answer for this even now. Like, I think the implicit assumption is that constraint templates will handle the versions that they are aware of, maybe be written without taking version into account, because usually there's enough similarities between versions that you could kind of get away with that. I don't think we have explicit guidance, nor do I think there's a solution that I particularly love, to be honest.
It says this is blocked. Is it because we don't have like a design or a decision?
I don't know. I mean, you added the blocked labels, so
Yeah, I don't remember now. I believe it's blocked.
oh yes, it is a mechanical keyboard. Sorry, I just saw that chat. Yeah, I'm okay with deferring this still. Like it'll get more salient maybe as Gator keeps getting used. I think honestly there's also I'm curious to see what happens with validating admission policy, right? Like they're not explicitly targeting portability as a notion right now, but they do want to sort of be usable in a portable fashion. I don't know if that makes 100% sense. Basically, they don't want to like, they're designed in portability, but they're interested in being portable. And so this seems to me to be something that they will run into as part of that process.
Mm.
And, you know, I do know that there's things they've been looking at, like having version conversion be something that is sort of declared in a config and enacted by the API server instead of having version conversion webhooks, right? And so if something like that starts to take off, then this problem gets solved for us. Or at least the hard parts get solved for us, and we just need to like pipe everything through.
How does that handle, like, say, new API versions? I forgot.
How does which handle new API versions?
VAP.
Oh, VAP. VAP itself. So VAP takes advantage of the fact that it's running on the API server, and it uses the same mechanism that admission webhooks use, where you specify the resource that you want to watch, including version. And if the inbound request is of a different version, the API server will do a conversion for you, right? So API server has access to the internal K8s conversion logic. It has access to the conversion webhooks. It's more than capable of doing that, but anything outside of an API server context, that it's just not guaranteed.
Okay, let's defer then.
Okay. This is very validating of how we've treated these bugs. We're like, yeah, definitely
Also, I think
something
you
there.
missed. I
Let's
think you
wait.
missed the top one.
Oh, sorry, I missed that we had closed the previous one. Oops. Also, I keep on opening things. Oh, wait, nope. Oh, I see. Yeah, because they closed. I'd missed it before. Got you. I think we have this. To go back to the Gatekeeper website, there's how to use Gatekeeper, parameters, input review. Oh, yeah, constraint templates we have as its own thing. And then we talk about
Yeah, I feel like it's there.
yeah, there's no like, I think, focused guide. Oh, wait, maybe it would be in the library. Is there a focus guide for, hey, you want to write a template? Here's like all the semantics around a template? Or it's kind of like,
I think we have some stuff in the frameworks.
yeah, frameworks isn't going to cover. Sorry, frameworks isn't going to cover anything Kubernetes specific that I know for sure. It will cover like the shape of a template and how to
Like what is a constraint template? What is validation targets, rego, libs, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, is a library.
No, it doesn't have that. But constraint templates docs has this thing, right?
Constraint templates. It talks about V1 constraint templates back when V1 beta 1 CRDs were going away.
Semantic structure of the input. Why do I feel like we have this, but I just don't know where?
People have definitely contributed constraint templates. I'm not saying that means we have documentation or good documentation, but somehow
It's not great.
people have been able to figure something out.
Yeah, I'm guessing mostly looking at the existing policies in the library.
But we definitely miss like how to. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, well, we say here's some rego, here's some parameters here. Oh, parameters field. This is we have documentation for how to use constraints. And then sort of bound up with the constraint documentation, we're like, here's how your rego can access the parameters field. And then we talk about input review. Okay, so this is, I think, kind of poorly organized, right? Like there's no reason constraints ever need to know about input review, right? So a lot of the stuff under constraints is really more about constraint templates.
Mm.
I do think this is like the most important page. There's also referential data stuff, right? Where we talk about where you can access referential data. Maybe the thing to do here is once we have the VAP stuff going, we can overhaul all of this. Because that's going to add another dimension to the whole concept of authoring a template anyway. Right? Like we'll need to make it clear, hey, if you want to use referential data, you need to use Rego, right? And you could put your code in your template, and here's the different languages that we support, and here's what you get if you use Rego, here's what you get if you use VAP, all that.
Mm. So like a root for template authors, and then sub pages. One is for Rego, one is for VAP.
Or something like that, right? Like right now, I would say the documentation we have for authorship isn't great. But if we were to write documentation for the situation we have now, which is Rego only, we know that's going to go stale order of month. So we may as well fix everything at once.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Do we want to move the constraint framework README into the docs? Like to the website, sorry.
I don't think that may. So let's look at the constraint framework. 1 second while
I have it in the chat. If that's easy.
Oh, thank you. It's in my browser memory. Anyway, so this is the README. It talks about what a constraint is, an enforcement point, what is a template.
Yeah, I think in the future it might be good to just basically like merge these together and then have the WAP stuff also in like integrated in here. Like here are the sort of the things that like the Rego versus native validation or whatever.
Yeah, the thing I wouldn't put is like what is a target, for instance.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Yeah.
it's not that I don't think target and clients and all that are important. I think they're just not relevant to consumers of Gatekeeper.
Yeah.
But yeah, this seems to me like a better discussion of the semantics for sure. I don't know if I would embed this directly, but this is certainly something that I would mold the new documentation off of.
Okay, are we okay with moving this issue to milestone 315?
That's the
that we can
next
track.
release, so like 3-ish months from now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
If nothing else, we can push it back if the VAP stuff gets delayed.
Yep.
Did you do that or?
Oh, I just did it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All
All
right.
right. What's it?
Time check.
Oh no. Well, we got through 4 issues or something like that. 3
You
issues?
only have 105 to go.
That is an average of 5 minutes an issue. All right. We want to switch to design doc.
Yeah.
Cool. So did everyone get a chance? I mean, not everyone, obviously. Well, maybe everyone. Most people, I think, would have been able to see me push this out. Have people had a chance to read it? No. All right. Do we want me to just sort of go over it in a high level and then we can ask questions about it? All right. So sort of stepping through the doc. The first bit is just sort of what the doc is. And the technical background probably shouldn't be surprising to most people here. It's just, it starts off talking about gatekeepers, basic primitives, right? Constraints and templates. Then it talks about VAP primitives, bindings, parameter objects, the CRD that backs a parameter object, and policy definitions. And it spells out a rough kind of like, here's how these things map onto each other, and points to that other doc that was written that gives some more specifics on the actual algorithm for going from one to another. And so that's all just background information, nothing super new there. And then sort of the design part starts off with the user stories. Basically, what I think are the most salient paths here, right? So the first thing is, as a user, I want to be able to use VAP through Gatekeeper, right? I want my constraints and templates to be able to be enforced by VAP. Second, I want to be able to turn this option on or off, depending on whether I'm interested in it. Third, I want to be able to turn this on or off at a template level, right? Say there's a template that has a bug in it in one direction or another. I want to be able to just exempt that template. Third, I want to be able to turn this feature on or off at the constraint level for the same kind of reason. And then last, I want to be able to see or infer what state the system believes a constraint or template should be in. So basically, I want to be able to tell what Gatekeeper's opinion of the template is, right? So if I'm debugging something or if I'm relying on VAP for enforcement, I want to be able to observe the state of the system and know what I should expect to see at any given time. One thing I left out of here that is maybe implicit is the user still wants to be able to audit VAP constraints. This doc would still allow for that, but I just didn't list it as a user story. Then I put a few stories as out of scope for either being like currently impossible or for other difficulties. So one would be a zero enforcement gap transition. And this would be something like, say I have a constraint that's currently enforced by the webhook, and I want to move it to being enforced by validating admission policy, or vice versa, during that transition time, I would want that constraint to always be enforced by at least one of those two endpoints. And currently that's impossible. And the reason for that is that VAP itself is not observable, meaning there's, as far as I'm aware, currently no status that you can look at for VAP objects to know if they are actively being enforced by the API server or not. And so because Gatekeeper cannot know if something's enforced, it cannot know whether it's safe to, say, delete, to stop enforcing something via the webhook, right? Like that option would just never be safe. So the best we could do is create VAP objects, call that good enough, and Kubernetes will ingest or not ingest VAP at whatever its pace is, right? So basically, once the VAP objects have been created, we offload responsibility. We consider our responsibility for admission enforcement offloaded to VAP. The next thing that is explicitly out of scope is decision observability for admission. And this is because, again, the API server is the one doing denies for VAP resources, right? Gatekeeper has no way of knowing what actions the API server has or has not taken. So we don't really have any ability to push metrics around rejections done by VAP. So we can still have metrics around actions Gatekeeper's webhook takes. We can still have metrics. We can add metrics around like number of constraints or templates Gatekeeper thinks are subject to VAP. But there's just no way for us to support, if someone wanted to use Prometheus and observe Gatekeeper to know how many resources were rejected by Kubernetes, we can't. And absent Kubernetes doing something, we will never, to support that, we will never be able to do that. So highlighting that. All right. Now, as to how users will be able to do this, long story short, annotations. Sorry, labels. I chose labels because it will be easier to select, right? If someone wanted to run kubectl get all constraints that are enforced or not enforced by VAP, they could use a label selector to run that query. So it'll make management slightly easier. And we don't really need the extra capabilities that annotations give us. And basically there will be three. Oh, let me dial things back before I get to the annotation bit. In order to turn the feature on or off in its entirety, we will have a command line flag, right? And that command line flag will have three possible stages, right? One will be VAP generation is off. Another one, the second stage will be assume that Gatekeeper webhook does the enforcement. And the third will be assume VAP does the enforcement. And basically the difference between those two is, as I said, we're going to use annotations to gate whether a specific object is enforced by VAP or not. And this changes the interpretation of what happens if that label is missing, right? If we assume Gatekeeper, a missing label will mean Gatekeeper's webhook should do the enforcement. If we assume VAP, a missing label will mean VAP should do the enforcement. And so this is just meant to provide a path for a gradual rollout, right? I can imagine a user starting off with everything disabled, right? Then enabling the feature with assume Gatekeeper, enabling constraints or templates one by one, right? Then once everything is enabled, switch to assume VAP so that they don't need to keep labeling everything, right? And then just switch to a model where they revert to the webhook only where necessary. Like if there's, say, some thing where gatekeeper's code is newer, so they need to use the webhook for that particular rule. All right, so as I said, that will be done via labels, and the label, you'll have a label, I think I called it gatekeeper.sh/usevap. Obviously, we can bike shed on names whenever. And that label will basically be yes or no, right? Missing label will be interpreted as guided by the flag. Use VAP yes means generate VAP objects always. Use VAP no means assume the webhook is enforcing. And that's pretty much all of the user surface. Do we have any questions about that before I get into edge cases?
I had a quick question about what happens if a user adds the label to a rego policy. It's no op.
Yeah.
So you just like if you had like the always generating and there's a rego policy, we check if the engine is rego and basically no op if that's the case.
Yeah, the details of how it would work would maybe be slightly different from that, but that would be the result. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a good call out. I didn't list that as an edge case, but if there is no VAP source code and you put that label on a constraint or a template, it should still be enforced via the webhook.
Right, and then this is definitely going to happen if the user adds the VAP default, which is always generate, but have no cell policies.
Yeah.
I forgot now. Can you have a template that has both VAP and both
Yes.
cell and you can,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah, and Gatekeeper would assume VAP. Like basically there's an engine priority that you can give to the constraint framework, and we would put VAP as the higher priority.
Can you do that today, or is it in the future?
Well, yeah, the experiment does it today. You can
Oh,
you
okay.
can
I
put
didn't know
a
Wait,
you'll
why?
need to disable that validation of Rigo that we remember that removal of validation
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we
yeah.
reverted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that, Rita?
Why would you could have two rules, right? One cell, one rego. Why do you default to VAP?
Just because, like, you would assume that both would be equal, right? Like it's meant to be, if you have a constraint template and you have multiple implementations, they should all have feature parity. And I would assume that VAP would be faster.
What would be the use case for that? Like, why would anybody want to do that?
To have both Rego and VAP?
Yeah.
I don't think you would want to do that long term, but for instance, Gatekeeper Library, we would probably want to have both VAP and Rego so that users of older versions of Gatekeeper that didn't support VAP could still use constraint templates, and yet we could migrate templates to be written in VAP.
So if you had like an older version of Gatekeeper, say 3.12, something that before we added VAP, is that still supported if we had like multiple engines?
Yeah. So basically what would happen is that I think it's the case, I would need to double check, but if users had a template that was written in the old style where there's just Rego, that would continue to work, right? And if they added that other clause of here's the K8s native validation in parallel with the Rego, basically older versions of Gatekeeper just would ignore that K8s cell bit.
I see.
And but newer versions of Gatekeeper would see, oh, there's K8s native, I'll use that. And still newer versions of Gatekeeper would be like, okay, I can use that to generate VAP objects.
Yeah, I guess that's a good transition, sort of like way. If you add both, and then if you are an older version, then Rego still works, but if on a newer version, you get the VAP stuff.
Yeah. Long
And
term,
what
I would oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, finish.
Oh, long term, I would expect you'd only really want one implementation, but in the short term, this makes it so that people aren't forced to upgrade, right? They can take their time in either direction.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I liked it.
And then for audit, it would also default to VAP?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you could change that, right? Like if you disabled VAP, probably what we would do is we would not load the VAP driver, right? And therefore it would read the Rego.
And I guess from a maintenance perspective, if I'm writing that template, I would need to make sure the two are consistent.
Correct. And that's where Gator and the test suites play a role, right? Because the test suites have input objects, right? And they're testing the output of the policies, right? They're not testing the code that the policies are written in. Those can be used as conformance tests, right? So if you're migrating from Rego to VAP, you would make sure you had the coverage you wanted in the suite.yaml, then write your cell code and make sure it still passes.
I think having, I mean, I'm a little conflicted between like the all or nothing flag versus the label. On one hand, it's like you have more flexibility, but then on the other hand, it's like it does make debugging complicated because then you have to figure out what was the label used, what was the default behavior to understand which one was actually used for a particular emission request.
Yeah, well, that might go into observability, right? Like if status showed the expected enforcement mechanism, right? If for anything that was running a webhook operation, you could just look at the status of the constraints, maybe in conjunction with the status of the template, to see what Gatekeeper actually thinks, right? And then the config would kind of be irrelevant unless it was a surprising, like, why does Gatekeeper think it should be enforcing? I thought I had this flag or whatever.
And what was it at the time the mission fired, right?
Right.
Because let's say I change this after the mission request, that could get kind of complicated. It could get pretty messy. Like I thought Gatekeeper was taking care of it, but no, it's actually VEP.
Yeah, I would say though that I think there's a certain amount of like defaults play a role here, right? Like mostly people probably will just go along for the ride unless they have a strong opinion about which should be doing the enforcement, right? And if they had a strong opinion, then they're probably going to come with that opinion in their issue, right? And certainly they'll say sort of in how they investigate it, they'll have certain places they'll be looking based off of their assumptions of how it should operate. So you kind of use the defaults associated with a given gatekeeper release to gate the behavior that you would expect for the majority of the bugs. And then the other people will kind of self-identify.
So let's take a real, like, let's say migration scenario, right? Let's say I have, I don't know, before 128 or whatever, right? And then upgrade to 129, or maybe 129 to 130, right? Where the VAP APIs are more mature. Are you envisioning something like a template would have both the Rego and the VAP stuff, and then initially it will be Gator default, and then once we go to 130 it will still be Gator default, and then once we're comfortable then it will go to VAP default? Is that kind of the experience?
Yeah, so the templates, I don't make an assumption either way, right? Templates are going to do what templates will do, right? I think the gatekeeper library templates will gradually, over time, those that can be migrated to VAP probably will be. But I don't want to like couple gatekeeper's timeline to the library's timeline. But yeah, other than that, yeah, I would expect us to gradually shift the defaults sort of in a timeline that made sense, right? Like we would probably keep it to assuming using Gatekeeper for a while, right? Like we're probably not even going to enable VAP until VAP. We're not going to like have VAP as enabled by default until that engine is stable enough, right? And it's in beta, so maybe it is now, but you know, our code, our engine code ourselves would also need to be stabilized. So yeah, gradual.
I guess I'm not clear on the if there's enough value of the constraint template label.
So let me paint a scenario where that would be valuable. Let's say the person regularly upgrades Gatekeeper, but does not regularly upgrade their Kubernetes cluster. And let's say there is a template that is written that uses an let me take a little step back and talk about a detail of VAP. So VAP cell, there's custom Kubernetes built-in functions for VAP cell. For example, the ability to parse, I believe it was host names, is something that Kubernetes is adding specifically to cell. Another thing, we don't take advantage of this because we can't, we're not on the API server, but basically requests to the authorizer, right? There's a special cell function for that VAP has added. So with every K8s release, there is a chance that there will be a change to the cell language in the form of some embedded function that didn't
I remember.
exist before.
Okay.
Yeah. And so if someone like wants to use a template, right, maybe they need that feature, but they can't upgrade K8s, right? That template will need to be exempt.
And that's
Because
specific to that cell function you're using. Okay. Okay. Might be good to just add a little bit of that just for
the
not
why.
gonna- yeah,
Yeah.
the why. I see the value there. But if it's not that, I just feel like it's like more added complexity and not enough value, if that makes sense. But that's a really good use case, actually.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's also just a general like escape hatch, right? Like if it makes it like, oh, for whatever reason this isn't working for this specific template.
I
you
mean,
can
yes and no.
select
I
go
just
back.
feel like it's like where people can like shoot themselves in the foot, and then you're the on-call person that has to go figure out why. Just seems
Got it.
like one more variable that you have to deal with. You know?
Yeah, it's it's either the on-call person's best friend or their worst enemy, depending on the issue.
I think Sertaj brought up a good point, right? In terms of how this impacts the policy library. Like, I can see the argument for having everything in a single template versus two different templates. I can see arguments for both sides, actually.
I mean, I like the single template because it's very clean. And then it'll use WAP where it's available, and if not, it'll just use Rego.
But then you're gonna have to carry that for a long time, though. Like having both of them. Oh, sorry, Alex.
Wait, no worries. I wanted to ask, like, in that scenario that you were talking about, Max, where there's some functionality built into VAP cell, can we still run into problems in the future where, like, I'm a constraint template author and I'm assuming there's some VAP functionality that it's actually in a later K8s version, and I somehow forgot that my cluster is not running that version, or I don't know, and I'm expecting my template to work, but it's not.
Yep.
I see. This is like probably like orthogonal to the design that we're talking about here. I was just gnawing on that when you mentioned it.
Yeah, like at a minimum, an example of it would be the authorizer, right? Because again, that only works for if you're running inside the K8s API server.
I see. Interesting. I'll file that away in my head.
But yeah, and with regard, Rita, to your thought about, well, what about the support, right? The fact, we'll need to maintain this dual Rego VAP constraint template, and how long will we need to do that? I mean, I think that would also be true if it were two separate templates as well, right? Like it's kind of the same timeline, because you can deprecate the Rego once you can assume everyone's kind of moved to VAP, right?
I just don't see a world where we can ever really deprecate Rego.
I mean, that's I think where the circling of the library support policy conversation comes in. Like, what is the support policy?
Right.
Well, it's not just about more meta than that. Like this project is called OPA Gatekeeper, right?
Right. Well, to be clear, I don't mean deprecating Regos and the language in its entirety, right? Like referential constraints, for instance, would remain written in Rego. There's probably other examples where Rego is a better fit. This would be more for if you have something that is written both in Cell and Rego, right? And you're doing that so that you're not breaking people who do not have Cell. Sorry for the double negative. Once you can assume Cell is available for everyone, for that specific template, you can get rid of the Rego, right? So you don't have double, you don't have double the code for every template. You're using only Rego or only Cell.
Yeah, for the record, I'm like I said, I see arguments for both options, but I'm leaning towards not putting them in the same place, just so that we don't have to carry both of them for a long time. But we, as in, I don't mean the policy library maintainer, we as in, if I'm the operator, I don't want to continue to have to carry both.
Like operator of a cluster?
Yeah.
I mean, you can just delete it.
Yeah, but sure.
I mean, it's not like you're forcing anybody to use the
But a lot of people want to use it as is, right? A lot of people want to use the policy library templates as is, right?
So they would object to having Rego be present in those templates?
I can see an argument for that because to your point, let's say in the future, I only care about Rego ones or I only care about the VAP ones. Why am I forced to have both?
I mean, you're not forced to, though.
I mean, we are making that decision right now, right? And it could impact people who are relying on the templates. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, if you're writing your own templates, you could kind of do whichever makes sense for you. The
Yeah.
possibility of having them both in a single template doesn't preclude having them in separate templates. And then for consumers of the library, yeah, I get like we're offering people who are consuming that a smooth transition, but if they have a strong opinion about, well, I really don't want cell or I really don't want rego or whatever in a template, like they can just filter it out, right? Like they can use jQuery or something.
Because
Yeah.
like as maintainers, I think we'll have to cater to both crowds, right? Like people that cannot use cell or they cannot use rego or like so. I think the single templates kind of solves that issue. And then if somebody does not want either of them, they can remove it. Like they don't have to use it as is. But if they want to use it as is, it'll just work. Like there's no negative about it.
But then it goes. You had a good point about if I'm adding a new policy, now I have to add it. for
Oh yeah,
both.
I think say if somebody wants to say add a new policy, I don't think we should add. So say somebody wants to add a cell policy, we shouldn't get on. Oh hey, you must add a rego.
You do or do not think?
We should not, because then that person may not know rego, right? Like
Yeah.
or it goes the other way too. I mean, we'll do the best effort to add both like equivalent policies, like say no privilege spots, whatever, right? So we'll add both of them. But if somebody wants to create a new policy for like, I don't know, allowed tags or whatever, and
Yeah,
if
but
it's
that
cell
goes-
only, that's fine.
But that goes back to what do we decide as the default, right? If we're saying default is a single template for both, then you're making an exception for new policies, you see. You can't have both. You kind of have to make a choice, right?
Well, what I personally, what I would do is say once the VAP stuff is stable, for new policies, if it can be written in VAP, it should be, right? Because that's the most flexible option. You can enforce in webhook or you can enforce on VAP. The converse is not true for Rego. But like for policies that already are written in Rego but could be written in VAP, right? Such that we want to migrate those policies. We keep the Rego there, we keep it up to date for a certain amount of time, and then give people time to move to using a version of Gatekeeper that has VAP available.
Okay, we can come back to this one. I don't know if I've thought about all the corner cases yet. For the policy library stuff, I mean.
Gotcha. And it's that specific question I think is kind of orthogonal to this doc.
Yeah.
Because that part of the design has kind of already been written. We're not obligated to use the two engines in one template stuff, but it does exist. Anyway, yeah, so the edge cases, I'll just ignore work items because that's just, if you like the design, those are the work items. If you don't, then only different work items. But there are a few call outs that I wanted to highlight. The first one is I tried to play around with the possibility of using the multi-enforcement point enforcement action stuff to gate, say, whether a constraint is enforced via the webhook or not. And it turned out to not be a workable method because we actually want something that's kind of ambiguous, right? We want enforced by Kate's admission, right, is kind of the concern. And then there's a sub concern of should that admission be in webhook form or VAP form? And then to your point, Sritash, around, well, what if something is only written in Rego, or what if it's written in Cell? And also, what if someone's exempting a constraint. There's edge cases where the engine itself needs to be aware of whether this call is coming from the webhook or not. And so if we tried to use enforcement actions to do that, the engine would need to be aware of enforcement actions, and that's just an unacceptable level of coupling. Given the time, I don't want to go too deep into that, but it's in the doc, and feel free to comment on it there. Probably a little more thorough explanation is also in the doc. The last thing would be duplicate admission violations, right? Like, I think a bad result would be someone getting 2 violations for every violation, right? One coming from VAP, one coming from the webhook. I don't think that is completely preventable in the transition state, right? When something is newly being added to VAP or vice versa, there's going to be a certain amount of latency where we're kind of doing both as things are like transitioning and settling down. But in the steady state, we want to avoid duplicating rejections, right? So it'll calm down after a couple of seconds, probably. And so I point that out as an edge case we want to handle.
Okay, I'm sorry, I do have to drop. Can we continue this later?
Yeah. Yeah, let me add the doc thing. We have the discussion around the library, which I view as orthogonal. I guess on the chat, if you could give me some signal as to whether there's enough alignment on the general approach that I could start working on the non-controversial things, that'd be cool. But yeah, other than that, let's also just chat on the doc in the short term and see if it carries the next week.
I need to read this a bit more in details and ask some comments. But in general, thank you for taking the time, and this looks very well thought out. And as far as, I guess, like next week, since folks are at KubeCon, do we want to cancel the call next week?
Is KubeCon? Yes. I think we always do that.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
Will you be at KubeCon?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Sertash will be.
Sertash will be, yeah.
Uh,
Are you?
I will also not be at KubeCon.
Okay.
You will or you will not?
I will not be.
Oh, okay. Do you know is Davis or Alex good?
No, they are not, unfortunately. Hooray!
I will represent all of us.
Yeah. There will be someone talking about policy controller in some form or another, is my understanding. Do you know Poonam? I think she's been to a meeting or two.
I think that was the Antos PM.
She was APM for Anthos, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think I met her in one of the calls. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, she'll be around.
I'll say hi. Yeah.
Did you see that there is a talk by Sig Auth about all the VAP things coming to Sig Auth?
No.
Oh, okay, I'll share it in Slack, but yeah, anyway, yeah, so structure authentication and structure authorization both now have solid integration.
Structure authentication and what is
basically configs. So instead of canal line flags, now you pass in a config, right, for authentication and authorization, and along with that you can add cell expressions.
Oh, interesting. So you could either like reach out via webhook or call these cell expressions kind of thing.
For authentication, yes, but for authorization, cell expression is only for webhooks. So basically, if you meet these requirements, then we call the webhook. If not, we skip it. if that makes sense.
Got you. So that you cannot bypass the webhook for authorization and use cell is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Or
Well, you could use cell to specify which kind of request should go through webhook. A one or more webhooks.
is authorization like someone needs to say yes or it's
Yeah.
rejected,
Yeah. So
but no one
RBAC,
can say no?
so RBAC is one authorizer, right? Webhook is another authorizer.
Interesting. Can someone say no, or is it only you need at least one yes?
I think it's the other way around.
So there's like no opinion, yes,
Yes.
no, and there must be zero
So
no's.
it's like as
There must
long
be
as
at least one yes.
so either one says no, then you're no, or you skip no opinion, or all of them say yes.
Gotcha.
I always have to think of that. All right. Okay, I'll share it in Slack so folks can see.
Cool.
All right. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.